Hi, my name is Adam Barron. I'm a director of security here at Microsoft, and I want to welcome you to Microsoft Ignite and welcome you to this session, Understanding Cybersecurity with Microsoft. We've got a half an hour, and cybersecurity is a complicated topic, but what we're going to try to talk about today is, what is the landscape of cybersecurity? What is driving kind of the behavior in the world? What are some of the strategies you should adopt as a customer to think about how you can protect yourself, your critical assets? And then how can you go get some tactical things to just go get started with today? We want to leave you at this session with some things to go and improve yourself, right away. So let's dive in. I want to talk a little bit about, what is going on in the world today. And it's an understatement to say that we really are in an era of unprecedented economic uncertainty. Organizations of all types, from commercial entities to education, schools, governments, all have seen this massive need to accelerate their digital transformation to ensure that productivity can respond to this rapidly shifting, sets of expectations from customers and other entities. And ultimately, data and information are the lifeblood of this transformation, but they're also increasingly, attract cyber criminal activity. And these threats, these cyber threats, are becoming more and more sophisticated. Just recently, our Microsoft Digital Defense Report, which we put out that kind of surveys the state of the industry, made it really clear that these threat actors have rapidly increased in sophistication over the past year. They use techniques that make them harder to spot. For example, nation-state actors are engaging in new reconnaissance techniques that increase their chances of compromising high-value targets, high-value identities, and their criminal groups targeting businesses, and they have moved their infrastructure to the cloud to really hide among legitimate services. Then combined on top of that, a global security talent shortage continues to challenge security teams. There's not enough humans, there's not enough people to really help you stay ahead. Then, beyond just the attacks growing more sophisticated, to secure your environment, organizations really have to develop a new set of digital capabilities to break down data silos across the cloud apps and things that you've got, the broad portfolio of kinds of applications. You have to manage and think about all the different kinds of devices. And really, traditional security approaches and tools haven't kept pace. They've really let us down. So being able to do things like just having a hardened perimeter, having a secure network, kind of with privileged corporate access is really, maybe the best case kind of a security blanket, but it won't keep you safe. These siloed on-prem tools and data sets that can't talk to each other, it really hinders your visibility. It hinders your ability to correlate attacks, and it hinders your ability to do things like automating to keep track of these kinds of attacks. In a paradoxical sense, adding more and more tools in this sense can actually make you less secure. Oftentimes, these tools are not compatible with each other, and they create seams between the tools, which really, give you some assumptions about your coverage that may not be true. Others are thinking this as well, or spotting this. Findings from Forrester in their 2020 State of Security research surveyed 315 security decision makers, and those folks indicated that only 17% are leveraging automation to address threats. And that their security teams rely on an average of 10 or more tools of different categories to manage their alerts. So it's a massive amount of things to keep track of across a broad array of tools, and that just ultimately, wastes time, creates staff fatigue, and can create situations where their teams are chasing false leads. So all in all, these tools just are not designed for the kind of scenarios that we're in today. Then lastly, kind of on top of all this, and potentially because of it, the cost and the number of breaches are increasing every year. Governments are trying to keep up, and so regulatory rules are constantly changing. And the cost of staying compliant is continuing to increase. More than 1,000 regulatory bodies across the world release on average 217 updates every day. According to research that we did internally at Microsoft, 47% of people we surveyed considered complying with these key regulations like GDPR or the California Customer Privacy Act as one of their top investment areas. And keeping up with those 217 updates every day isn't easy. So really, since you can't be compliant without being first secure, everything starts with a security view from our perspective. Now, all that to say, it kind of paints a grim picture. So, like, what is it that what is the strategy for the future? When you take that all together, there's a lot of challenges that you are all under. Organizations find themselves responsible for protecting these overlapping webs of technology, like we talked about. Some of them you manage, some of them you don't. There's a lot of different devices. There's different users in different parts of the world. There's tons of corporate data. These old models just can't keep up. So what is that new model? Really, for the future, you need a security model that better adapts to the reality of where we are today. And so you have to have a couple of principles, three in particular that we think about. One is this idea of verify explicitly. So you have to move from assuming that people can connect to the applications that they're safe to explicit verification. And all of this falls under the umbrella of zero trust. So moving from assuming everything's okay to explicit verification is super important. The second policy is adopting what we think about is a policy-based least privileged access model. So making sure that that person, when they connect to a resource, has just enough privileges to do what they need, and that those privileges revoke later. And then lastly, no matter the amount of, given enough time and enough resources, attackers will make it in. So being able to design with the principle that every element of your system can be breached is super key. So those three principles really are what form our worldview around zero trust, and that future-facing view of how we think about our strategy for security. Now, what goes into zero trust within those three policy or three principles? We think about a few different elements that you have to have inside of your strategy. The first is identities. Whether they represent actual human people, cloud services, or IoT devices, this really defines the zero trust control principle. You have to know who is trying to access what. So when an identity attempts to access this resource, you have to verify that identity, and you want to verify them with a strong authentication like multi-factor authentication, and you have to ensure that access is compliant and typical for that identity, and that it follows this least privilege access principle. So identity is a super core part of the model. Then, we think about that identity is really paired with a device. So once an identity has been granted access to the resource, data flows from that application to a variety of different devices. It could be an IoT device, could be a smartphone, could be a bring your own device, could be partner managed devices that are outside your control. Can also include things like other workloads and applications or cloud hosted servers. So there's a variety of places where data can go. So this diversity creates a massive attack surface, and it requires that you have monitor and enforce the device health and compliance for each of those devices. Now moving to kind of the other side, you think about data, right? Data ultimately is what the security teams are focused on protecting. Like, this is the most important part. This is what really the attackers are after. So where possible, data needs to remain safe even when it leaves the device or the app infrastructure or the networks. So being able to do things like classifying and knowing what kind of data you have, labeling that data, and then where needed, applying an encryption policy so that when it leaves the device or the network, it's still protected. So that's a really key part of being able to restrict the access to that data based on the attribute of who's trying to access it. Then we think about applications. So from an applications perspective, the apps and the APIs to those apps provide the interface for the data to flow to those devices. So this could be legacy on-premises kind of applications. They could be apps that have been lifted and shifted by a cloud workload, or they could be more modern SaaS kinds of applications. So controls and technologies have to be applied to discover things like shadow IT. They could be apps that have been procured by some department that you're not aware of in IT. And you have to ensure that there's appropriate in-app permissions that gate access based on real-time analytics. You have to be able to monitor for abnormal behavior and control user action inside of those applications to ensure that you've got the security configurations appropriate. Next is infrastructure, right? Whether that's on-premises servers, cloud-based VMs, containers, or microservices, this all represents a critical threat vector. So being able to do things like assess for version, configure that server or that infrastructure, and doing kind of the just-in-time access that I talked about enables you to harden your defenses. Then you also need to be able to use telemetry to detect attacks, detect when things are weird, when there's anomalous kinds of behavior, and then automatically block and flag risky behavior to take proactive actions and to protect. Then lastly, on the kind of elements to protect, we think about the network. All the data is ultimately accessed over a network and within that network infrastructure. So controlling and putting controls across the networks provide this critical, what we call in-pipe controls, to enhance the visibility, prevent attackers from moving laterally throughout your network. Ultimately, best case scenario is networks need to be segmented, kind of thinking about things like including deeper in-network micro-segmentation to be able to give you this real-time threat protection, doing end-to-end encryption, monitoring, and analytics as well. So those things are kind of the elements that you have to think about within the zero trust kind of model. Now, there are some tools that you need to kind of tie that together. First of all, you want to be able to apply policies and do policy-driven access across all of those elements. So being able to do things like microsegmentation, because it's more than just networks. It requires that you're able to gate your access based on who the person is, where in the world they are, what kind of behavior patterns they have. Are they accessing something for the first time? Are they accessing something they shouldn't need to? You also need to know what data sensitivity is included. Is this something that we care a lot about, like the recipe for Coca-Cola, or is it like what's for lunch at the cafeteria this week? Being able to understand the sensitivity, what applications being accessed, and the state of that device and its security kind of status. So it's important to ensure that all the policies automatically enforced at the time of access, and then it's continuously monitored throughout the session of that connection whenever possible. So this policy-driven access is super important. Then you have to be able to have kind of this idea of visibility, analytics, and automation. So your telemetry from those systems, these six things we talked about: identities, devices, data, apps, infrastructure, and network. Being able to have all that telemetry, and it has to be able to be processed and acted on in some automated way. Attacks happen very quickly, right? Like there's more attacks than you have humans to block them. So you have to be able to use the power of automation, machine learning, AI, to respond, as humans just can't react quickly enough. So that's when we think about zero trust. Like this is the North Star goal for how we think about the modern strategy for moving from this siloed set of tools that worked in some cases, but really we've outgrown them, to where you want to be in the future. So let's talk about, when we think about the next set of conversation we'll have, Microsoft has a set of solutions that can help you. And really, we think about these zero trust principles as we've built them all out. So I wanted to take a next step and kind of talk to you a little bit about, how we think about harnessing the power of Microsoft's cloud and our zero trust principles to offer these solutions that behave uniquely. First of all, when we think about the solutions that we're going to offer to help you make progress on your zero trust journey, we think about kind of the concept of protecting everything. You need to be able to safeguard your entire digital organization. You have to be able to have integrated security, compliance, and identity solutions that are built to work across all your platforms, across devices, across whatever cloud environment you may have. So really anything that less than kind of securing everything lets people in and ultimately is not secure. So we secure devices, identities, apps, clouds, really this fundamental fabric for how we're working differently and new today. So really you have to have that full scale of this comprehensive end-to-end multi-cloud, multi-platform kind of solution. Then it has to get simpler. Like keeping track and keeping up with all of the attacks is complicated. So you have to be able to see the entire picture. You have to figure out and prioritize the right risks. You have to be able to remediate an entire attack chain and really do that within a fully integrated tool set. And you have to get some strategic guidance from your vendors. So we have to give you help, and we'll give you help to create, really get the maximum out of the humans that you have today. Then you have to have better outcomes, right? You're going to have to use Microsoft tool because we catch what others miss. We're going to apply this automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and human expertise to help you detect these threats quickly, respond effectively, and then really ultimately fortify your security posture. Because you really can't stop what you can't see. And so this, outside in, inside out approach helps our customers scale faster. And lastly, you have to grow with your, when you invest in these tools, you want them to grow into where your future is going to be. So you want that peace of mind that comes with a comprehensive security solution. So you can grow your business, create and innovate and do the things you do, and know that your security tools are going to keep up. We believe that security should help enable your business go further, go faster. And as we innovate products across all of the markets that we participate in, we're uniquely positioned to meet that security need of the future. So those are kind of some of the ways that we think about Microsoft security solutions is slightly different. Protect, simplify, catch, and grow. What I want to do is show you a slide next that makes people pretty surprised. When you think about Microsoft's end-to-end security, Microsoft participates and has capabilities across over 40 security categories. I think folks don't often think about Microsoft as a security company, but from this perspective, we've invested deeply to be able to bring all of these categories together in an integrated kind of way. So it's really, it's not acceptable for you to find a vendor to deliver anything less that's comprehensive, right? You have to think about something across your all the digital threats you're going to face, because they're going to come from anywhere. Bad actors trying to compromise a credential, like to find a weak password. They're going to breach your systems. And you think about employees not following their privacy policies or not encrypting things. It really only takes one weak link. So Microsoft has invested across the full set of portfolio across a wide range of categories to help you have this end-to-end kind of solution. So really bringing these capabilities together in that integrated solution, we have natively ways to integrate these individual, what you might already have today as individual layers of protection to improve both your end user experience and to improve the efficiencies for your security operations team. So again, kind of an interesting view of all of the categories that Microsoft plays in. And if you think about that security in the center, really across your Microsoft workloads and any other cloud or platform, you think about to be able to secure. And as you think about those categories, we're continuing to think about, we have a breadth. We have 40 different categories that we're going to participate in. And in addition, not only are we sort of best of breadth and bringing those together, but we also have increasingly, this best of breed set of capabilities as well. So as you think about our technology with Gartner has been recognized as best in class in 5 Magic Quadrants. So access management, cloud access security broker, enterprise information archiving, endpoint platform protection, and unified endpoint management tool. So these, Microsoft is a leader in 5 of these Magic Quadrants. So not only are we well integrated and work across a breadth, we have this depth capabilities as well. And it's not just Gartner, we've got kind of Forrester here as well. In Forrester, we're a leader in 7 Forrester waves. Security analytics platform for Sentinel, Azure Sentinel, enterprise email for security, and on and on, you can see here. So really, continuing to make massive investments in bringing these categories together and being the best in each individual category. And in addition to that, one of the things that we hear from our customers is that we have to be able to make the most out of our resources, right? There's no one that has a blank check when it comes to solving these problems. So we aim to deliver a more cost-effective offering than any other vendor. And so this slide, if you look at, on the left side, if you purchase these products individually, right, you went to the various point solution vendors, we estimate it might cost you about $30 per user, just based on list prices, to bring together those advanced security capabilities. And on the right, we put this together in our Microsoft 365 E5 security offering that brings together, cloud access security broker, email protection, endpoint protection, the list goes on. And so for those customers that already have E3, they can step up to E5 for just $12 per user per month, again at list price. And that doesn't include, potential additional savings. We offer deployment services with Fast Track, and our tools are sort of pre-integrated. So you might actually spend an additional set of money integrating your point solutions that you may not have to spend with Microsoft. In addition, not only do we have these security capabilities here, but we also have things like threat and vulnerability management. We have end user education that's available as part of the package, and our user and entity behavioral analytics tool set. So again, more capabilities that are included inside of that Microsoft security offering with E5. So, great categories that are broad across things, increasingly more and more depth and best of breed, that we really have these standalone incredible products, and bringing it together is a great value for customers. What I want to do is take a mini tour next through the capabilities that we have. We think about Zero Trust as our North Star strategy, and our products bring those things together and bring them to life. There's great value in how we bring it together, but I wanted to spend a couple of minutes as how we think about these solutions and what they actually deliver. And then we'll actually do a demo in just a few minutes. I think about 6 elements that come together for the technology areas. The first one is identity and access management. And I got this one first because I do think this one is core. The vast majority of breaches, as we all know, start with a compromised password. They're really the weakest link in most security strategies. So we start with a strong identity with Azure Active Directory and access management to protect your resources. So it starts with identity there for us. Then you can think about threat protection and being able to stop those attacks. Our customers consistently express their concerns about the volume of data, the alerts they have to manage, as well as the increasing sophistication of attacks like we've talked about. So with threat protection, we prioritize bringing these things together, these threat signals together, automating the threat protection to help you meet the demand for these security workloads. So that's where we bring that together in this idea of Microsoft 365 Defender. Then as we branch out to workloads that might be outside of Microsoft 365, you think about cloud security. As you all move your workloads to the cloud, you're all on your own digital transformation journey. It's never been more important to protect those resources everywhere. Whether you have them in Azure, you have them on Amazon Web Services, you have them in Google Cloud, you might have Slack or Salesforce or a variety of other, one of the thousands of cloud applications. We've built this, comprehensive security model to help protect at every layer, regardless of what cloud app you use. Really, our aim is to provide security across all of those. Then we start thinking about, this identity at the center. How do you stop attacks? How do you scale to the applications you've got? Then we kind of think about how do we protect that information, and then how do we govern that? Our customers tell us about the difficulties they have holistically and consistently protecting and governing their information. We talked about that as a lifeblood. That's really what attackers are after. So 64% of organizations or companies report that employees share personally identifiable information, PII, and other sensitive data without encryption. So that's sort of a problem. And so we've really made information protection a priority. So you can do things like understand where the sensitive data lives. You can understand where it travels, where it goes, so that you can govern it throughout its life cycle. You can ensure that it's born classified. You can apply an encryption label to it, and then ensure that you know where it goes throughout its life cycle. And the fifth one, as we continue to move, is risk management, right? Really thinking about building your strategy and then understanding what threats exist. You can have external threats, right? Risks can come from external, obviously, but increasingly risks come from inside the organization. So with this, we've built solutions to help prevent, investigate, and remediate both malicious and inadvertent activities inside your organizations. Think of something as simple as sending sensitive information to the wrong person in email. Like that's an insider risk kind of process that you want to make sure that you have baked into your security posture. And then compliance management is key. So it's daunting oftentimes and time consuming to navigate these compliance landscapes. I talked about over 200 updates every day. So we help make that simpler. So I want to transition a little bit to talk about Zero Trust a bit again, and then I'll do a demo of something. For this, we think about being able to land an architecture. We talked about the 6 elements: identities, devices, data, apps, infrastructure, to help us land a Zero Trust strategy. So you have to be able to verify your identity. Knowing who is requesting what access is really key. You have to be able to do things like multi-factor authentication. You have to be able to do all of those data access requests to the devices and verify what that device looks like. Then you have to be able to protect that data wherever possible to be able to do things like auto transfer, auto classification, and encryption. You have to be able to harden those applications, protect your infrastructure, and govern those networks. Then, like we talked about, one of the most important pieces is this idea of policy-driven access, being able to do things with Microsoft, which we call conditional access, to be able to be able to rule over who is accessing this information, where they're coming from, and then understanding during the session of how they're accessing the application to be able to provide capabilities to protect it. So I won't spend much more time. I know we're getting a little short on time, so I'm just going to move forward to our demo.
Yeah, Adam, 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, so what I want to talk about now is Secure Score. So great. So we've talked a little bit about what's going on in the industry. It's very scary. We should all be very concerned to protect ourselves. We talked about zero trust and how that really is this North Star vision. We talked a little bit about what Microsoft provides. Now, what are you going to go do? Like you're going to, we're done with this call in 5 minutes. You're going to go figure out what to go do next with the rest of your afternoon. Like, how can I make my company more secure? And we think about being able to use what we call Secure Score. This is the best place to just go get started. So Secure Score is the place that gives you visibility and guidance for you to learn to get better security in your environment, to take advantage of the investments that you already have. Secure Score is something that every person that already has a Microsoft subscription, might be just Office 365 or Microsoft 365, you already are going to get recommendations within Secure Score. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So like I said, Secure Score gives you this visibility and guidance. And here's kind of what a screenshot of what it looks like. The first thing that it does is it's going to quickly assess your risk exposure, right? So here it's going to show you, what your risk exposure is and what is your security state across your full enterprise. It uses this scoring system that kind of makes it entertaining, sort of like a game, to improve your security posture. The more controls you've implemented, the higher risk score you'll reach, or the higher score you'll reach. So with this, you're going to have access to a broad set of technologies, and you're going to get threat prioritized guidance. So you'll be able to take advantage of like this list that it's going to provide of what to go do next. Like, look at the top one. It's going to almost always be turn on multi-factor authentication. Like, please turn on MFA. That's the first thing we're going to go say. So really, our machine learning stack ranks these recommendations based on the latest threat intelligence to help you make the next recommended step to improve your security posture. Now, what you'll also be able to do is it's easy to determine which controls have been fully implemented, the risks that they mitigate, what kind of impact they might have on your end users, any history of regression, and then exactly what you need to go do next. So with this planning collaboration workflow, you'll also be able to drive the posture improvement process, because it's important when you roll something out to understand what it's going to impact. Now, I get this question a lot, like, what's the right score for your organization? A lot of people are like, I've got to get to 100%, but it's probably not realistic for a lot of organizations with legacy infrastructure or app requirements that are incompatible with certain kinds of security controls. So what Microsoft does is we actually provide benchmarking capabilities that enable you to compare your score to a global average of organizations like yours. Same industry, same location generally, same size, and other kinds of metrics. So you can use these benchmarks to help you understand where you've been. And lastly, we've always tried to, show our bosses how well we're doing and what kind of progress we've made. So we provide reports to help you as security administrators or people in the security world drive productive posture management conversations with your leadership. Maybe it's the CISO, to help understand what kind of trends, so that your administrators can report project status, and you can get the credit for the great work that you've achieved in improving your security posture. And again, anyone can go to Secure Score today. You can just log into security.microsoft.com, find the Secure Score portal, and start taking actions and getting those recommendations today. So with that I think is probably the world's fastest tour through Microsoft Security, the landscape, the vision, and kind of what to go do next. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to drop a couple of announcements of places to sort of go to next if you want to continue your learning or continue your exploration of security here. And with that, I think we're just about out of time. I don't know that there's any other, I think the folks behind the scenes have been helping out to answer all the questions, but we'll probably stick around for a little bit longer to just make sure that we get all of those questions answered as well. And I'm just popping in those announcements. The first announcement there is where you can go to continue your learning. So this is sort of our security landing page where you can find learning paths, videos, certifications, all of that kind of stuff. And then the second link that I put in there, this is the Security at Ignite kind of one-stop shop. You'll be able to find all of the various sessions and ask the experts and things like that about security over the rest of today and into tomorrow as well. So with that, I want to thank everybody for their time today. Hope they have a great rest of Ignite and stay safe.